one-on-one, like inside the confessional, or on a large scale, does need to be confidential to protect the people that have shared some of the most intimate secrets. So that in and of itself is going to kind of breed conspiracy theories because there's secrecy. But those sort of things kind of magnify, is there secrecy about that church? And really, honestly, in today's world, secrecy is a dirty word.
Secrets, forbidden knowledge, and a conspiracy that targets the Catholic Church. But is Dan Brown's Angels and Demons merely a work of fiction? Or are there broader implications? Clues that lead us, not only through the ancient streets of the Vatican, but very much closer to home.
I'm quite familiar with incendiaries, Miss Vetra. I never heard of antimatter being used as such.
Well, it's never been generated in significant quantities before. It's a way of studying the origins of the universe, to try to isolate what some people call the God particle. But there are implications for energy research.
God particle?
What we call it isn't important. It's what gives all matter mass, the thing without which we could not exist.
You're talking about the moment of creation.
Yes.
In Angels and Demons, the assassin steals a small quantity of highly volatile antimatter from the laboratory at CERN in order to trigger the destruction of the Vatican and the entire hierarchy of the Roman Catholic Church. But why antimatter? And how does it relate to the centuries-old struggle between science and religion?
Our church is at war.
In Switzerland, at the European Organization for Nuclear Research, known as CERN, the laboratory's most ambitious experiment involves the Large Hadron Collider, a 17-mile-long device that allows scientists to create high-speed antimatter collisions. It is hoped that study of these collisions might someday reveal the holy grail of particle physics, the Higgs boson particle, otherwise known as the God particle. Although not as yet proven, the Higgs boson is theoretically the particle that could help to prove what has become known as the Big Bang theory, the means by which the entire universe might have been created.
The term God particle is one that I have a love-hate relationship with, in that I think it certainly captures the imagination of people who don't work in the field, but it really was to get across the idea of it being a particle that imparts properties to a large number of other particles, essentially all of the other particles in physics.
This idea of a God particle in the universe, there's this tendency to want to find a physical proof of God's existence. And so we're looking for something in the material universe that might indeed prove, yes, that God exists. But in my view, this search for a God particle is very untheological because it dispels faith. Faith, by its very nature, is an assent to what cannot be proved, what cannot be seen. That is, you might say, the strength of faith itself.
And so it should not be taken that God particle means that if we find it, we understand everything. In fact, there's a huge amount more to be understood.
Do you believe in God, sir?
Faith is a gift that I have yet to receive.
In 1978, Pope John Paul II was elected head of the Roman Catholic Church. The forward-thinking Pope re-examined sensitive issues that had embroiled the Vatican in controversy for centuries.
Pope John Paul asked the Pontifical Academy to look into the Galileo case, and in the year 2000 he makes a public apology for a series of ills that the institutional church had committed in centuries past. And so amongst these is an apology to Galileo.
Pope John Paul II asked, as kind of an olive branch to the scientific community, let's reopen that case and look into the errors that we've already admitted were wrong, and yet re-examine that and discover why that happens, so that, in his words, we can find a greater concord between science and faith.
In 2005, Pope Benedict XVI was elected as the 265th Bishop of Rome, in a line that has remained unbroken since the time of St. Peter. Ironically, this pontiff was born in Germany, the very birthplace of the Illuminati.
Certainly today, I think you see a Vatican that is much more willing to consider the changes and the new technology and try to incorporate that into their worldview.
In fact, to the point that there's actually a papal observatory, and the Vatican takes really, seriously the results that come out of science.
So on topics like stem cell research, on topics like cloning, on topics like euthanasia, there is much more discussion today. There was a time when it would have just been a straight no. Now I think that the Vatican is very interested in at least hearing about what are the limits of science, what are the possibilities in this direction.
In some ways, religion and science are seeking answers to the same questions. Who are we? Where did we come from? And where, perhaps, are we going?
I think that the big challenges are not going to be coming from specific technologies, biotechnology questions, but the general theoretical issue of reconciling faith and science.
When you start thinking about the tensions between science and religion, where this tension comes from, I think, is at times when religion or science forgets a little bit what it's good at and loses a little bit of its humility and becomes a bit arrogant. Not every question has an answer that can be answered experimentally with a measurement or a test. And those really aren't questions for science to explore. That's for other areas of human knowledge and human inquiry.
Thomas Aquinas said it is both faith and reason. It's the confluence of those two that allows us knowledge of truth and really getting to know God. He said that they don't compete and they will never conflict, he said. That we need both science and faith and reason together.
Science and religion are not enemies. There are simply some things that science is just too young to understand. So the church pleads, stop. Slow down. Think, wait.
In Angels and Demons, you've got essentially Big Bang theorists and creationist theorists. You've got science versus faith. You've got CERN versus the Vatican. There is no yes or no to Angels and Demons, and that's what I like about it. It doesn't take an editorial position that one is proven and one is disproven.
If the outside world could see this church as I do, looking beyond the ritual of these walls, they would see a modern miracle, a brotherhood of imperfect, simple souls.
Particles at 99% the speed of light.
It's a story of science versus religion, and that's a subject of controversy that will never get solved. And so it's a stirring conversation.
Who is more ignorant? The man who cannot define lightning, or the man who does not respect its natural, awesome power?
Photons are moving.
Dan Brown in Angels and Demons dramatizes that whole great debate between science and religion.
They were dedicated to scientific truth. So the church began to, how did you say it? Oh, hunt them down and kill them.
We like to believe that the Vatican has all these conspiracy theories and that it's got a great secrecy hidden in its archives.
What makes you so sure that the Señor's there?
The number 503.
There may be an element of that. Every institution has its secrets.
Dan Brown certainly is a master craftsman of combining things that are factually accurate and historically true with fiction.
An obelisk, Egyptian symbol adopted by the Illuminati.
But when you've got something where someone can take out of their pocket a dollar bill and see this pyramid that he's talking about, then they begin to wonder, does that mean everything in the book is true? Does that mean we really have all these kind of conspiracies and secret societies?
The best response I can think of to reading Angels and Demons is saying, I'm going to get on a plane and go to Rome and see the places, see those works of art, see the Vatican, see it for myself.
What is so unusual about the entertainments that Dan Brown creates is that they're controversial, they're thought-provoking, they stimulate the imagination, they stimulate curiosity.
The path of illumination is a hidden trail through Rome itself.
They lead us to educate ourselves.
There it is, the angel of peace.
And human beings, we all love a mystery.
Break this conclave. Open the doors.
Hey!
And tell the world the truth.